Welcome to It's a Crime. I'm your host, Margaret McLean. What does Boston police officer John O'Keefe's lifeless body tell us? What secrets will it keep forever? Are we any closer to discovering the truth of what happened on January 22nd, 2022 during a blizzard? The defendant, Karen Reed, stands accused of striking her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, with her SUV and leaving him to die in the snow. This case has sparked so much controversy on a national level. In fact, this week I was happy to be a guest on Vinnie Politan's closing arguments on Court TV, and I had the chance to really interact with the live studio audience, both before and after the show. I don't care which side you're on, I respect opinions from both sides. In fact, I'm trying to analyze this case from a juror's perspective. For example, what were they thinking when they saw those graphic autopsy photos? I'd like to start out with the medical examiner. She was a score for the defense, and we're going to explore why.
The amended death certificate in this case stated that the cause was blunt impact injuries of head and hypothermia, and the manner was undetermined.
That was key testimony from one of the prosecution's witnesses. So this is the medical examiner, and she can't even tell us the manner in which John O'Keefe died. She doesn't even say that this appears to be a homicide. She says it's undetermined. She also amended the death certificate after she learned about the police investigation. She knew that witnesses allegedly heard Karen say, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," and she learned about the damage to Karen's taillight. Of course, the police and prosecution would have been very happy if she had amended that death certificate, but she did not. In the last trial, it even came out that Trooper Proctor called her a whack job for not amending it, suggesting that he was pressuring her to amend the death certificate to be more favorable to the prosecution. The medical examiner's testimony was a score for the defense in that respect, but I'd also like to focus on other areas where she'd had an impact on the jury. We're going to be looking at the injuries to John O'Keefe's body from autopsy photos. Here's a warning, it's going to be very graphic and disturbing, so if you don't want to look at it, then skip ahead or watch my next video. I'd like to take a moment and reflect on how the O'Keefe family must have been feeling during this testimony. It may have been one of the hardest days for them. So this week, I attended a parole hearing to support my best friend, whose son was brutally murdered. The family had to live through the brutal details of the murder all over again. I can't even begin to describe the raw emotion and the tears. As a mom, I just think about how hard it would be to sit through the scientific and brutally cold autopsy pictures of John O'Keefe. In fact, his mom, Peggy, didn't even attend. She couldn't see it. But the emotion was very apparent on the other family members. These are the injuries to John O'Keefe's body that the medical examiner discussed in graphic detail. Skull fracture, bleeding on the brain, hemorrhage on the eye, laceration above the right eyelid, bruising on the right hand, a scratch on the left hand, scrape on right knee, and numerous marks and lacerations on his right arm. These injuries have sparked a lot of debate. Mainly, where did they come from? Many believe that Karen Reed was framed and this is a cover-up, that John was really involved in some sort of fight and attacked by a dog inside 34 Fairview, and his body was dumped in the corner of the lawn. They'll use common sense like a jury would, and they look at these injuries and they say, well, look at the injuries near the eye. It looks like he could have been punched. And the lacerations on his arm, it appears to be scratches or bites from a German Shepherd like Chloe, the Alberts family dog. So what was it? A fight and a dog bite, or a motor vehicle collision? Here's an interesting point that attorney Alessi brought up on cross-examination.
Assuming a fall backwards onto frozen ground, and there being on a lawn with grass, would you expect to see any grass at all in the injury site?
It's possible to have grass.
Do you see any evidence of grass in this depiction?
No, I do not.
Attorney Alessi scored some points by suggesting to jurors that if in fact John O'Keefe was struck by a car and slammed hard down onto the ground, wouldn't you think there would be some evidence of grass stains in his cuts and lacerations? Another area where there's so much debate is the lack of injuries to John O'Keefe's body. So I've spoken with a number of Karen Read supporters who say this part just doesn't make sense. I mean, if John was struck by a big SUV, again, slammed to the ground, wouldn't you think he'd have, a broken ankle, a broken wrist, perhaps a broken leg, a broken arm? You get my point. So here's what the medical examiner has to say about that.
I did examine his lower extremities. That is protocol in any case of suspected impact with a motor vehicle. What I look for is some sort of bruise, either on the outside of the leg or bleeding on the inside, or any fracture of the bones of the legs. I did not observe those things.
Overall, the medical examiner couldn't say whether John O'Keefe was struck by a motor vehicle or involved in some sort of altercation or a fight. Next, we'll be discussing physical evidence and its impact on this trial. Once again, thank you for listening to It's a Crime.